Welcome back to Yaffee Live here on Talk Radio 102.3, live and local now, live and local all day long. Really glad you are with us here on a Thursday afternoon. At this time every Thursday, we speak with Brandon Lewis. He is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative, and you can find out more about them at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, how are you today, my friend?
Outstanding. Merry Christmas, Yaffee.
Merry Christmas to you as well. Have you looked into this case in front of the Supreme Court yesterday, oral arguments dealing with transgender procedures for minors? Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti arguing the case. It seems like the Supreme Court's going to side with Tennessee, but what do you think about all this?
Well, first, I would just say that I've not agreed with every ruling Skrmetti has ever made, especially a couple regarding the governor's emergency powers, which hopefully we will see some legislation brought again this year to curtail those. But by and large, he has been remarkably aggressive at defending Tennessee from federal overreach, from allowing the conservative agenda that is put forth by the General Assembly, if and when it's put forth, to advance. And so I've been happy with him overall. And Skrmetti's opinion is it's about irreversible treatments. Like, we don't need to be doing things to kids when they're under the age of 18, making decisions that could be irreversible. They could never go back, right? A lot of bad decisions you make in life you can recover from, but if you mess around with someone's hormones during the stages of development, they can be forever harmed by it. And Kavanaugh kind of gave a nod that the Constitution doesn't really speak to it, and so we should let the democratic process determine the outcomes. Of course, many European nations have already gone in this direction. We're a little bit late to the dance on that. But in the end, it's just funny to me to see this even being argued in front of the Supreme Court. It's like there's some kind of demonic mind virus that's coming after parents, and it's affecting children. And in my opinion, I don't think, Yaffee, if they polled Democrats, what few there are, 25 to 30% in Tennessee, and asked them if they supported transitioning minors, I think you would have a hard time getting over 50%. And I just don't see why liberals and liberal publications like the Tennessee Holler continue to defend this practice as if it's healthy for kids.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right on the polling. I mean, you do look at polling right now, I'm pretty sure it's like over 65% of the country does not approve of this stuff. And if you did the polling even after the election, it would probably be higher than that. But they are doubling down on this for sure, at least in terms of the radical left. And you had mentioned the demonic mind virus. I mean, Elon Musk called it the woke mind virus because it's one reason why he started to fight against the woke left, because it affected his child. So what would you say to those that argue that they'll basically say, why do we care? It's not that big of an issue. Why do we care so much in terms of fighting against it? What would your response be to that?
Well, I mean, why would we care if parents were beating their children and chaining them in the basement as a society? Why would we care what someone does to their children if they're just property, like a dog or a cat or anything else? But they're not. They're made in the image of God, and they need to be protected. And there's nothing uncommon about government stepping in to look after the welfare of children. I mean, that is even back in the Industrial Revolution, they started the process of limiting child labor and safer working conditions. I mean, the movement started then. And so I think it is so funny if somebody was convincing their child that they were really a no fingers American, and they started chopping off fingers, those kids would immediately get taken away. But if you chop off a different body part or do something that's going to harm that, it's a different thing. Is it really? I don't think it is. I think people have been brainwashed, and I think there's we know this, there's a latent evil in the heart of man, and this is probably one of the worst manifestations of it.
Speak with Brandon Lewis. He is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. Kind of on this note, a little bit of a similar story that you guys covered on your website. We have the Protect Tennessee Minors Act. It was signed in June by Governor Bill Lee, but now that's being challenged as unconstitutional by a group that says they're the Free Speech Coalition. And this has to do with requiring age verification for porn sites. So, I mean, this is kind of the same thing, right? We're trying to protect children from sexually explicit stuff, and yet there are groups out there that just don't seem to want to do that.
Well, of course, there are groups out there. I mean, I don't know if I remember this correctly, but I believe that the pornography industry, in terms of revenue, is larger than the gambling industry. And people that make their money off anything at that level, no matter what it is, they have data. They understand and know exactly who's coming to their websites, what's driving traffic to the ads, who's swiping mommy and daddy's credit card to get subscriptions or finding other ways to pay for it. They understand the gateway nature of pornography and how that bleeds into adulthood. So these organizations that are masquerading as free speech coalitions are very likely just porn industry funded organizations that realize, hey, we've got 23% of our viewers are minors under the age of 18, and we know from our research that these young men and women, once they get hooked on it, move into adulthood with this addiction, and it's a built-in audience. And so I think it is far less about free speech, and it is far more about the money in this situation. And, it's interesting. Similar laws have passed in Indiana, Louisiana, Montana, Texas, Utah. They've also been challenged as well. But I think one thing that's interesting, the Tennessee law was passed in our state unanimously by lawmakers. And so it unanimously, like there was not a single Democrat, which is unusual, that would, Justin Jones, nobody stood up and said, hey, we need kids looking at porn. I mean, they even Democrats in Tennessee wouldn't get behind that. So I think, again, this is not something that is publicly popular. I think that the will of the American people and Tennesseans are for this. But I do believe that, the most corrupting influence that we have in Tennessee, as I've said before, is the corporate special interests that fund the campaigns of people in Nashville. And this is just another instance of a corporate interest, the pornography industry, doing something that is, in an attempt to negatively impact our culture and the health of our youth.
Speaking with Brandon Lewis, he's the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. At least the good news here is there are some victories. For one, you have, like you said, unanimous consent of that law. I think Tennessee is going to win the case on transgender so-called treatment for minors. And then we have this story as well that you guys covered, where Knox County removed nearly 50 explicit titles from the school libraries. We heard these same type groups say, well, that's against free speech or that's censorship. But no, it's about protecting kids. Tell us about this story.
Yeah, so we're kind of seeing a domino effect in these schools now. The domino effect does not come without a catalyst, and that catalyst is typically in many cases, an active Moms for Liberty chapter or a group of angry parents who get into this topic like a bulldog, and they just do not let go of it. And the law is on our side here. I mean, there's a methodology you can work through with this. And so in Knox County, and I know that they've got a Moms for Liberty chapter. In fact, I just talked to one of them here recently, and they had close to 50 books removed from their library to comply with the state's Age-Appropriate Material Act. And I think that we're going to continue to see this in Tennessee schools. But again, the whole thing that bothers me is we've got a culture that is so corrupt that this has to happen. Like, it's so broken that it has to happen. We're about to run a story, I think, about some kids in Dandridge that were trapped on a school bus because the school bus driver lost his way, drove around for about an hour and a half later, got back to the school parking lot. Parents are in the parking lot to pick up their kids. Their kids are on the bus. A lot of them are younger, kindergartners, etc., crying for mom and daddy. And the bus superintendent won't let the parents pick up their kids. I'm like, I believe there would have been an altercation if I had been there and my child was stuck on a school bus, and they wouldn't let me have them as if they were property of the government school system. And so we've just got this brokenness in both the incentive structure of schools, their lack of incentive to ever provide customer service to the people they serve, and the low academic achievement. And so the issue, I think, Yaffee, is like, why aren't we having to do this in the first place? And that should be the larger question people are asking.
Well, I think it's because, I mean, there are many different reasons, but you're right. There's some kind of brokenness in terms of we forgot the primary purpose of education. We forgot the primary purpose of the school bus. It's there to help the parent, and the parents have the ultimate rights. I'm amazed there wasn't some kind of altercation in that situation.
Well, we'll be running a story on it. I would not have let them left. And I would have, and so we'll see. And there's like a whole video about it. We'll see. One of our reporters is about to send this stuff to us. So it's amazing. I mean, if people knew half of what went on in public schools, they would be utterly shocked. I mean, just even conservative Saudi Daisy. We got a transgender man teaching kids pronouns in the school, wearing a dress. Who makes it all the way into the classroom, past every adult, into a schoolroom of kids in a dress to teach them about pronouns? Like, how does that even happen? Everybody keeps being focused on the fact that it happened. In my opinion, it's like, how is it so broken that it could have even happened in the first place? Let's look into that.
Yeah, and it's a cultural thing, I believe, as well, because to them it's like, well, they're afraid to speak up because of the problems, the cultural problem in schools, and our culture as a whole says, oh, no, you can't judge them, so we have to let them in, and then you have a sue-happy culture and all of that stuff. So we'll definitely have to talk more about that in the future. Brandon Lewis, he is with the Tennessee Conservative. Read it and read his latest stories that we've been talking about at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, I appreciate it as always. I know we'll talk to you again next week.
Feliz Navidad. I'll see you soon.
All right. See you soon, my friend.